On the planet Valthera, where three crimson moons hung like bleeding wounds against a star-streaked sky, the Kleros arena was a crucible of memory and pain. The sands beneath the fighters' feet were not just stained with blood, but carried the weight of countless fallen souls. For centuries, no warrior left this arena unscathed, bones broken, pride shattered, or lives ended. All except one. General Veyra, known as the Flame Beneath the Sands, and was a terror whispered across star systems. Her name was a warning, a synonym for annihilation. She didn't just defeat her enemies. She turned them into lessons. Men who entered her arena rarely left whole. Those who knelt were humiliated, stripped of dignity. Those who fought were carved apart, their defiance reduced to screams. Yet one warrior, a mercenary from the distant Therian expanse, did the impossible. He survived her blade, not once, but twice, unmarked and unbroken. His name was Kael, not a towering giant, not imbued with superhuman strength, but armed with a razor-sharp mind, a chilling calm, and a reckless grin that mocked death itself. Their first encounter was at the Iron Rift ambush, where Kael led a ragtag band of mercenaries through Veyra's front lines, sowing chaos and nearly killing her second-in-command. The second was in the Kleros arena, when Veyra demanded a duel before her war council. Kael didn't just survive, he held his ground. Not with brute force, but with precision, agility, and an utter refusal to be cowed by her legend. Her blade, honed to a killing edge and gleaming with the promise of conquest, stopped inches from his throat. The crowd bayed for blood. Veyra gave them silence. Kael was escorted out, untouched, a curiosity, a scandal, a defiance of her myth. 6 months later, Kael returned, not coerced, not chasing glory, but driven by a reason even he couldn't fully articulate. He strode through the arena's gates, sword slung across his shoulder, that same half-smile playing on his lips. Veyra stood at the far end of the blood-red sands, clad not in ceremonial armor, but in the scorched, battle-worn plating of a warlord fresh from slaughter. Her eyes locked onto him, unblinking, like a predator sizing up prey it couldn't quite understand. "So, you're back," her voice rolled like thunder, silencing the crowd. "Got bored," Kael replied, shrugging. "Thought I'd roll the dice again." The warriors at her side laughed, a harsh, barking sound, until she raised a hand. The laughter died. Veyra stepped forward, barefoot on the crimson sand, her sword still sheathed at her hip. "You're the only one I ever spared," she said, her voice low, cutting. "The only one I ever respected." Kael tilted his head, meeting her gaze. "Are you afraid of me?" Veyra, her lips curved into a dangerous smile, her eyes glinting like embers. "No, but I'm curious. Want to know why you're still whole?" The crowd held its breath. Kael nodded slightly. "Yeah, then fight me." "Kael," she said. "Let's see how long your luck holds." Steel clashed under the red glare of the triple moons, a ringing fury that shook the arena's obsidian spires. Veyra's sword, sharp enough to split a war machine, slashed with a force that could end worlds. But Kael didn't meet her head-on. He moved like a shadow, dodging, parrying, striking with surgical precision. He wasn't fighting to survive. He was fighting to read her, to understand what made a legend like Veyra pause before his throat. Their duel wasn't a battle, it was a conversation in steel and sweat. Veyra attacked like a storm, each swing carrying the weight of 100 victories. Kael countered with fluidity, his blade seeking gaps in her fury, not blood. The crowd roared, but the two fighters were deaf to it, lost in each other. You're slowing down. Veyra growled as her blade grazed his shoulder, missing by a hair. I'm reading, Kael shot back, his sword scratching her armor, a deliberate mark. Read faster, she snarled, but her lips twitched with something like amusement. They stopped at the arena's heart, blades at each other's throats, breaths mingling in the hot air. Neither flinched. Veyra spoke first, her voice steady but sharp. You're different. You knew that already, Kael said. She lowered her sword, eyes never leaving his. I spared you because I didn't want to destroy something rare. Now I want to know why. Kael stepped back, his blade still raised, not from fear but respect. Then stop calling this a fight. The crowd didn't cheer. They sat in stunned silence as Veyra turned and walked out of the arena. Kael following not as a prisoner, not as a victor, but as something that Kleros had never seen before. In Veyra's war fortress, carved from obsidian and the bones of fallen enemies, Kael was given a room, not a cell. The walls gleamed black, reflecting the glow of a real fire in the hearth, not synthetic, but alive, crackling with defiance. A tattered banner hung above it. Not Veyra's sigil of conquest, but the lost crest of the Thrime clan. A lineage thought extinct. It didn't belong here. Just like Kael. Veyra entered one night, unarmored, unarmed, wearing only the gray battle wraps of a soldier between wars. Her arms bore tattoos black, jagged lines woven with scars that told truths no chronicle could capture. She stood before him, her gaze not that of a general, but of someone searching for something unnameable. You didn't run, she said. Wasn't invited to, Kael replied, that half-smile flickering. I gave you a room, she countered, sitting on a stone bench by the hearth. Firelight danced across her face, softening its edges but not its intensity. Why are you really here? Kael sat opposite her, moving slowly, like a diplomat facing a storm. Because you didn't flinch. She frowned. Flinch? I've crushed armies. But you stopped. Kael said, you looked at me, and you stopped. Not mercy, curiosity. Veyra stared into the fire, silent. Then she reached into a stone bowl, tossing him a strip of dried meat. He caught it without looking. You're the only one who didn't scream when I moved to kill, she said. Didn't know you were going to, he replied. You did, she said, a glint in her eye. That's why you stopped me. Kael leaned forward. So why me? Her gaze hardened, not with anger but memory. Because when I looked at you, I didn't see weakness. I've broken stronger men, but they always crack before the end. You didn't. They sat in the firelight, words hanging between them like smoke. Veyra, who had never known fear, and Kael, who didn't fear her, were beginning something neither could yet name. The fortress changed. Guards who once sneered at Kael now avoided his gaze. War beasts chained at the gates no longer growled as he passed. Generals, who had watched Veyra dismember foes with glee, whispered his name with unease. He wasn't one of them, but he was something more dangerous, a mystery Veyra hadn't destroyed. In the war room, an obsidian table projected holographic maps of conquered systems. Veyra stood at its head, her expression unreadable. When Kael entered, the room fell silent. Sit, she ordered without looking. He did. A general, Goraz, a scarred brute, stepped forward. General, he's an outsider, not one of us. Kael met his glare. Want to test that? Goraz sneered. I want you gone. Veyra didn't move. Challenge him. Goraz, she said, her voice soft but lethal. He hesitated. then backed down. The meeting continued, but Kael understood Veyra hadn't kept him for study or amusement. She kept him because she wanted change, and she couldn't do it alone. They trained in the underground chambers. No audience, no spectacle, just breath, sweat, and skill. When Veyra disarmed him with a twist and a knee to his shoulder, he hit the ground and laughed. "You still hit like a starfall." She offered a hand. "Good. I'm done fighting fools." As he took her hand, rising, there was no fear in either of them, just the knowledge that the war beyond these walls wasn't over, but its shape was shifting, and so were they. Word spread like wildfire. Kael Vorn, the man who survived Veyra's wrath, now walked her halls as an equal. Stories twisted, some said he'd seduced her with human cunning, others that Veyra had softened with age. Those who whispered such things didn't repeat them. One evening, Kael found her on the fortress's high ramparts, the crimson moons casting light over jagged mountains. Her armor was half-fastened, her sword leaning against the wall. "You're making things difficult," she said without turning. "Haven't said a word all day," he replied. "It's not what you say, it's what you are." Kael stopped beside her. "And what am I?" "A question I can't kill," she said. The wind snapped around them, cold and dry. "I could leave," Kael offered. "If I'm in your way." "You're not," she said instantly. "That's the problem." She turned to him, her eyes sharp but not hostile. "You fight like you have nothing to lose." "I had nothing to protect," Kael said, "until now." Her expression flickered, something fragile beneath the steel. "You're not afraid of me," she murmured. "But sometimes I think you're afraid of yourself," he replied. She laughed, a short, sharp sound. "Afraid I've burned cities to ash. And yet you let me stand beside you." Veyra didn't answer. Instead, she picked up her sword, turned it in her hands, and offered it to him. He took it, feeling the faint tremble in her grip, not weakness, but trust. The attack came on the first night of the storm. A coalition of exiled warlords from the Outer Rim, bearing grudges from Veyra's early campaigns, struck the fortress with stolen ships. They hid in asteroid clouds, launching ground scorchers through the canyons. Their plan was simple: kill Veyra, break her command. They didn't expect Kael to lead the defense. He moved through the smoke like a wraith, issuing orders in three tongues, rallying troops not his own. He wasn't a general, but he bled beside them, earning loyalty no banner could claim. Veyra led a counter-assault through the southern gates, her war axe cleaving through armor and bone. But there was no joy in her fury, only cold precision. They met in the courtyard as the last invader fell. Veyra stood over a kneeling warlord, axe raised. Kael stepped between them. "Let him live," he said. "He burned our cities," she growled. "He killed my people. And now he kneels. You've won." She stared at the warlord, bruised and broken. "I took trophies because they begged." She said, "I cut them to make them fear." Then she looked at Kael. "You made me want to spare." She dropped her axe, not from weakness, but choice. That moment shattered the myth of the flame beneath the sands. The peace summit was held on Zoran's glass plains, a scarred world of cracked crystal and dormant war machines. Veyra stood beside Kael, not in battle armor, but tempered ceremonial garb, an alien sight. Envoys from other worlds eyed her warily. General Veyra, one Lyrith, said cautiously, "We've heard your offer, but many doubt you." "I don't ask for belief," she said, "only that you listen." She spoke of an alliance not forged in blood, but in cooperation. As the summit ended, she stood alone by a diplomatic spire, staring at the wasteland. Kael approached. "You hate this, don't you?" "I hate pretending I don't want to kill them all," she replied. He smiled. That's progress. She looked at him. Who am I becoming? Kael, someone who doesn't need fear to lead. Betrayal came from within. Goraz, unable to stomach Veyra's change, framed Kael for sabotage. An armory explosion, planted evidence a Therian-coded device pointed to him. Kael was bound and brought before the council. You betrayed me, Veyra said, her voice ice. You don't believe that, Kael replied, unflinching. She drew her sword, slicing his bonds. Run, she said. I won't, he said. If I run, you'll believe the worst again. She placed her hand over his. You're the only one I never had to break. Months later, Veyra and Kael built a new alliance. Warlords from the Outer Rim came, not to surrender, but to ask her to lead. She stood before them, not as a conqueror, but a leader. I won't rule by blade, she said, but stand with me, and will never kneel. Kael handed her a ring, forged from their first sparring blades, a symbol of what they'd built. Under Valthera's shattered sky, the flame beneath the sands no longer burned to destroy. It warmed what remained.